To support this show, go to patreon.com/5G4D. Out of the street corners they scream. You knew it was coming. You've been waiting for this for months. Rumour hardened into fear and now they scream at you. The sirens, their hysterical wail tearing through the white noise of the city. And you run. You run to pick up those things that can never be replaced. A picture of them in the days when they still loved you. Your mother's wedding ring. And then you turn to your shelf of games. You only have room for 5. 5 games for Doomsday. 5 Games for Doomsday is a show in which board game personalities are thrust into a cabin in the woods to outrun an oncoming disaster, but can only take 5 of their games with them. But which will they choose? My guest this week is a rising name in the world of board game design. He's designed Redacted, Kitchen Rush and the behemoth that was Anachrony, as well as working with Vlaada Chvatil on Tashkalar. My guest is David Turczi. David, welcome.
Thank you. It's very nice to be on your show.
So before we start, how difficult was it to choose your games?
I think like 3 or 4 of the 5 took me like a second to choose. It was like a no-brainer. I think I hesitated a bit on the 5th, which is why I think I gave you multiple options. I don't have my own list in front of me. I hope I would come up with the same options if given the choice again, but yeah, not very hard.
So why did you find them so easy to choose? Do you have a list like this already in your back pocket, ready to whip out if someone asks?
Well, Mage Knight has traditionally been my favorite game since almost forever.
Shh, don't give them away. Don't give them away. Speak in general terms.
Sorry. Well, that game that I shall not name has been my favorite for a very, very long time, ever since my world of board gaming has expanded. The rest was more the games I played the most, the game I wanted to always design an expansion for the most. Yeah. After that, when I got stuck at 4, I just opened BGG, sorted by ranking, and saw if there was anything above 9 that should be taken with the cabin in the woods or whatever your scenario is.
Yeah, it's a very robust concept. So your criteria was basically the games you enjoyed the most as opposed to any sort of replayability factor or survivability thing or practicality or any sentimental value.
I think these all come together. Like when a cool hot new game comes out, I enjoy it a lot, but for a game to climb onto the list that I say without thinking takes a lot of effort, and if you look at my list, I think only one of them is from the past 2 years. So while I'm what you call a hothead young one, but I don't subscribe entirely to the cult of new, just somewhat. So it's a bit of sentimental, it's a bit of these games I think all of the games I listed I've played at least 15-20 times, usually a lot more, so I know that they'll survive a few more plays.
So as a gamer, are you the kind of person who plays games over and over again, or do you just acquire loads of games, play them 2 times and move on?
Most of the games I play 2 times, and then either I keep it because it does something that nothing else in my collection does, or just sell it because I will probably never play it again. And there are a few games that hang on, and those games will get played infinite number of times.
And being a designer, do you have to buy games, or is something like Essen just a big swap meet where you get to
If my accountant is asking, then yes, it's completely imperative for my business and thus for my tax credits to buy games. If anybody else is asking, then no, it's not. Every now and then there is something cool happening that I check out just to see whether it brings me a new design space that how the hell did I not think of that before. But usually I buy games because I like them, and then every now and then a game comes to me saying, oh, game A did something very well, game B did something very well, why has nobody picked the best thing of game A and the best thing of game B and put it together in a game? And then I put it together, chisel the rules a bit, and boom, finished game. That has happened to me once or twice. But no, I don't have a shopping list of what's the best worker placement game of the year that I can copy, no.
Does being a designer change being a player for you? Can you play games simply to enjoy them still, or is everything a sort of looked upon with a critical eye and a sort of excavation of how the game is constructed?
It makes me a lot less pressured to win. I'm completely okay with analyzing the game, saying, yeah, this is a nice game. What I did was a bad idea, moving on. Like, if I lose and I have no idea why I lost and what the game did and what was I supposed to be doing, then I probably didn't enjoy the game. But as long as I got what the game was doing, then I have the same feeling I have when I'm playtesting my own games and going, ooh, this works. And in that case, the enjoyment comes from understanding what the designer of that game wanted, which is why I feel a lot less competitive since I've been routinely playtesting, because, playtests you never play to win, and that approach seeps into my daily gaming.
So let's go back to the beginning. So you were born in Budapest.
Yes.
Were you born in Buda or were you born in Pest, as if I know the difference?
The difference is Buda is the west side of the river, Pest is the east side of the river, but nobody who actually is from there keeps count of. But if you must know, my parents' flat when I was born was in Buda, but the hospital was in Pest, so what does it really matter? Yeah, I'm from Hungary. I always thought myself to be a big city boy, because by my definition, a 1.5 million city was a big city. Then I saw actual big cities later on.
You grew up in Budapest. You were born in 1987, which means you were 2 when the Berlin Wall came down. So you briefly lived under communism, but I assume you don't remember it. But how was growing up in Budapest?
My earliest world politics relevant memory is the same that every Hungarian kid of roughly my age shares, is that in 93 or 94, I think in late 93, the Hungarian Prime Minister died, and they interrupted the afternoon cartoons to announce it, and like there's a Wikipedia article about it that everybody remembers it.
How was growing up in Hungary post-communism? Was there a feeling as you got older there was a feeling of great freedom, great joy? Or I was in Hungary in 1999 and I spoke to a lot of people and they kind of said nothing really much has changed. The same people are still in power.
I can't tell you how was it before 1990, but I can tell you that there was never it never felt like freedom is here and we're having party. I mean, more and more the money can buy you everything approach took hold. In 1999, I was starting high school, so I assume your view of the place would have been a lot more relevant than mine. I spent my high school years in what you would call a fairly liberal, fairly not like somewhat better funded environment. So I always felt slightly more privileged than the average. After that, university, trying to make and meet, seeing everybody fudging their taxes. I mean, we call it the Eastern Europe or the Hungarian smarts. The as long as you survive, it's all right. But on the other hand, as things went from not so good to a lot worse in the recent years, I was one of the first to leave. So as you can tell, what little I saw, and as I said, my situation wasn't even very bad, but what little I saw was enough to look elsewhere. And look how that turned out.
So Hungary has turned very much to the right in recent times. What do you ascribe that to?
Well, I really don't want to get into long politics because I bloody hate it, but they are ideologically to the right. Technically, they are it's the sort of right that's so right that it's almost left. It's because they want state-funded everything, but they ideologize it with nationalism, and just no. Just no. And plus, in the recent years, it just turned into a Russian-style kleptocracy, and it's just there is no ideology behind it anymore. It's just people stealing money. So.
And so are you optimistic for the future of Hungary, or do you think that it's going to get worse before it gets better?
I'm feeling sort of the feeling you get when you're watching a very funnily said British comedy, only you know that this doesn't end well. That's the feeling I get when I look at my, country's prospects. Plus, I'm not a very sentimental sort of person, so, if they don't want reason, then I'm not gonna fuss about it and just move to a nicer place.
So, you, in the bio you sent over to me, you said you originally wanted to go into science, but you said that wasn't possible for you.
It wasn't not possible, but basically, in my high school years, I was a member of the school's astronomy club, which was at the time the best one in the country, probably the first one, and I won one big and a few small international contests at the age of 13, 14, 15, whatever, don't remember, and to go to a NASA funded program also. So everybody was assuming that that little annoying smart kid is gonna become some genius scientist when he grows all up and he'll do great things. And at that point I knew half of the adults in the science side of space science side of country, and I was like, it doesn't seem either exciting or depend what you call it, like reliably funded. So I was like, I'm not that good at it to become one of the world's best, so let's try something that will fund me and then learn how to rise about that. And interestingly, that story came back recently, because on the back of that I went and became a software engineer, and I spent my past 10-ish years working as a software engineer up until yesterday, because again I felt like, yeah, it's nice to be software engineer, yeah, it pays well, but I'm never gonna be one of the big ones, one of the famous ones, one of the people who put something on the table. And now I'm a board game designer.
So you've just become a professional full-time board game designer?
Yes, as of yesterday. You're probably the first person to hear it outside of my immediate family and a few of my colleagues. But yeah, so I sent in my resignation this morning.
Fabulous. So going back to that time, were you gaming then? During your school years, during your university
high school, we had a Hungarian ripoff of Dungeons and Dragons. That's what we were playing, RPG. And then in university, somebody first showed me Bang and Munchkin, which was nice as long as you don't know that there is anything better. And then somebody got us Battlestar Galactica, the board game, as a gift because we loved the board game, loved the TV series. And then it all went downhill from there. Played Battlestar for about a year and a half. Every week, probably, or at least every second week. That was before I discovered BGG and everything. And then I wandered into a Hungarian board game shop and bought Ankh-Morpork. And then a year later I went to Essen. I bought 25 new games. And then I moved to London. And then things exploded from there.
So, going on to your first game. It's one you've already mentioned, but the audience won't know because through the studio magic, I will have bleeped it out. But you're not the first person I've interviewed to have mentioned this. It seems very much to be a game designer's game. And this is Mage Knight. What's so special about Mage Knight?
When it's the game where the theme rules literally everything, yet the mechanisms are super smart. There are no compromises in the game. It's the game that every game designer wishes that they could design, because in today's market, unless you're somebody very big, if I walked up to a publisher saying, hey, I want to design an epic dungeon crawler with a zillion opponent types and with 40 pages of rules how to resolve a simple combat, they would go like, nah, we can't sell this. Yet Mage Knight works. It really shouldn't. I mean, yes, Gloomhaven now is the number one game, but if you compare it, to me they're very much similar, but if you compare the edge depth, like not the kind of thinking you do every turn, but the kind of thinking you do just when something special comes up. The Mage Knight is like dozen times deeper at that, but Gloomhaven is more for the modern market, where it simplifies it to the point where the good stuff is mostly still in there, but with more effort on the presentation and more effort on the ease of playing, I guess, or the time to fun. Because Mage Knight, you almost need a boot camp to learn. But for those of us, the happy and the brave, who went through that and learned the game, nothing compares to it.
Do you think we've become, I'm trying to think of a decent word, softer as game players, more easily offended and more easily put off?
There's more of us. And previously, only the hardcorest, the meanest, the most self-selectingly strategic people were playing, and their threshold was high. And now more people are playing, which means that the average threshold is lower, and it's not a bad thing, because this allows more ideas to come out and more things to flourish. Not everything has to be one kind of thing that one section of gamers play. And I like the option. I like the choice.
How would you feel if Vlaada went away, revised the game, and came out with a Mage Knight 2nd edition that was more streamlined, that was less arcane?
Off the top of my head, I know only one game that has done that. Martin Wallace's Study in Emerald. And the 2nd edition happens to be terrible. So I'm predisposed to scream, no! But on the other hand, it's Vlaada we're talking about, so when he went away and redesigned Through the Ages, he made a great game into an amazing game. So I guess wait, see, buy, play. Star Trek Frontiers tried to simplify Mage Knight, and it did nothing because it weakened the thematic link. And I'm saying that as a guy who loves Star Trek, and the game doesn't feel too Star Trek-y for me, other than in trappings and names of things. So even though I know nothing about the Mage Knight universe, the Mage Knight feels 100% theme to me.
So you moved to London. What made you move from Hungary to London?
I sent out my software engineer CV to 3 Canadian, 2 American, 2 British and 1 Australian company, and the London one replied first. And
how was moving to London? Was it fine? Was there a culture shock?
Well, first of all, I moved together with a bunch of Hungarian software engineers, including my girlfriend at the time. So we kind of had our own bubble, and then we expanded out from there. Plus, I was in London for all of 2 days by the time I joined London on board with 50-60 like-minded board gamers at the time. So to me, it just felt like more and better of the same.
And, I mean, I assume that the difference in life costs from Hungary to London was quite a leap, no?
Yes, but the difference in software engineer pay was as well.
And so you told me in the bio that you were playing a lot of video games at the time, and then you transitioned over to board games.
Well, in high school, it was mostly me sitting behind my computer throughout the night instead of going to sleep or study or whatever. And then through uni, the lady had an Xbox and she was obsessed with it. So every now and then I was like, sure, let's join. The big turning point was probably Mass Effect 3, which, if you know anything about video games of the time, you know that it was a I'm gonna burn my TV moment for many people, and I never went back playing video games after that. So, and it coincided with the rise of board games for me, and then I just never missed, and now I don't have the attention span. When the South Park video game came out on the Xbox, I sat down like, oh, this is super fun, I played for 3 hours, okay, let's play it tomorrow, and then the next day I didn't even sit down.
And what's the gaming scene like in London? Is it varied? Are there many places to play, or is London just too cool?
Well, as I said, I found London on board on my 2nd day in the country. After that, I really stopped looking, because that fulfilled almost every gaming need I ever had. 90% of my local friends are from London on board, including my fiancée. Yes, there are many other clubs that I've never been to, but this is, a place where you can play with other serious gamers up to 6 days a week if you're so crazy. I tend to go like once every 2 weeks or so these days. In the old times, I might have gone more. So yeah, London is a nice place to be if you're a gamer.
So, moving on to your next game, you chose Roll for the Galaxy.
Yes.
Explain why.
It was my first under an hour game that I gave a 10 to.
And why? Why is the under an hour thing a factor?
No, for me an under an hour used to be a negative. As I played more and more games and as I mentioned, the choice of options widened and I saw more non-epic games, a few of them started to bubble up on the, okay, let's play this again. And Roll for the Galaxy was the first one which was, played it once, immediately must play again, played it 4 more times, immediately must play again. And then I trained up my friends on it, and then when we got to a point where there were like 3 or 4 people who we all knew the game and had a good grasp of all the basic strategies, then it was apparent that the game is almost completely non-random. The game is super fast if everybody knows we are not waiting for each other. It's like, turn, roll the dice, tuk, 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 reveal, resolve, next turn. And then, so the game is super fast, the game is super strategic, and I really liked Race for the Galaxy, but that really dragged on if you played with more than 2 people. So these days I just play Race on the app basically 24/7, and when I need an under hour good game to play with 3, 4, 5 other people, then it's always either Roll for the Galaxy or Glory to Rome, which may or may not be on my list. Don't remember.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think you go through phases as a gamer, because when I started, I was very much into Descent and Battlestar Galactica, those sort of Ameritrashy games.
To me, that got ruined because after Battlestar, I had a phase with Game of Thrones, and when halfway through Game of Thrones, while the other people playing took 1 turn, I went off and I played an entire game of Ankh-Morpork, and then came back and made my next move. I was like, okay, I'm never playing this shit again.
No, and I found myself getting really into, at one point, light 30-minute card games. I went through a year of just all I wanted to play was light 30-minute card games. And I think it's really, really interesting that I was one of those people that started epic and went small, and now I think I'm going epic again. But it is, you're right, having a good game that's under an hour is absolutely invaluable.
Yes, so Roll for the Galaxy was the first game that really broke the I must play this again. Are we out of time? No, we must play it again. That's the first game that ever did that to me.
So a lot of games are getting dice versions and card versions, and it's a real sort of vogue at the moment. What do you think to that? Do you think it's cheap? Do you think it's a good design challenge? And can we see an Anachrony, the card game, in the future?
I mentioned that I have done in the past that I looked at 2 good or reasonably good games and said, ooh, why don't anybody combine them together in a different way? So if the designer of whatever game says, ooh, if I move it into dice, that gives me a new design space and then I can make that other game, then why would I say don't do it? So you can tell when something is an obvious cash grab. If a game was a themeless Euro, then redesigning it into a themeless Euro on dice won't improve my experience a lot. But if the game was a super smart, super tight tableau builder before, with a thin veneer of theme in case of Race for the Galaxy, then redesigning it into a multiplayer, even faster, easier to teach, but similarly strategic dice game, I'm okay with that.
Okay, so coming on to your first published game, Redacted was the first game you published, and you said in the thing you sent to me that it was published by chance. What does that mean?
First of all, Redacted wasn't my idea. One of the people in my Hungarian Battlestar Galactica group, Mihai Vince, came back to me one summer afternoon saying we had a week-long family vacation in Croatia and I was bored, so I sat down with my brothers and I designed a board game for them. and we called it the either the Casino Royale or the James Bond game, or we had such silly names for it, and it was a hour-ish long, quick hidden deduction game. Nobody in our group has heard of Resistance or any of its skin at the time, so we were like, oh my god, we invented something new. And basically the drill was we get together, we play 1 or 2 games of this, and then we play a game of Battlestar Galactica, and then see you next week. So after a year or two, we had lots of good ideas, and I was the loud one of the group. I was the organizer. I kept everything together. So I started systematically giving feedback to Mityu, saying, "Wouldn't this be better if we did that? Wouldn't that be better if we did that?" And that just evolved. And then once we opened our eyes to modern board gaming, we were like, okay, how to get this published? Do we do like print and play, and then we made a pitch, then we went to our first Essen where nobody really cared. I must have waited for at least 4 different publishers to read the pitch, which was far too long and far too uninteresting. And then we even had a super pretty prototype designed, handmade by co-designer and artist, and as I mentioned, girlfriend at the time, Kate Nimefro, who is credited as one of the designers, exactly. And we showed that to everybody. Everyone was like, "Man, this is nice. Move on." And after we moved to London, I saw a video on Rado's channel, who was the first YouTuber I found at the time. And he mentioned that he and his friends, as he said in the video or something like that, is organizing a board gaming holiday in Greece. This was the first Cardboard and Sun event. I don't know if you ever heard of it. And and I'm earning big Western European money. Let's go on a board gaming holiday. And we put the redacted prototype. At the time, it was called Intelligence. We put the prototype in the bag. And throughout the week, because it was super casual and everybody was playing board games with everybody, every now and then I had a chance to talk to Rado on the way to dinner and back, and I was like, okay, we have a game. How does one get it published? And then he was like, all right, tell me about the game. And the organizer of Cardboard and Sun is the man behind Ludi Creations. So Rado was like, why don't you just talk to him? And at the end of the week, Iraklis comes up to me and says, I heard you've been designing a game. Do I have to play it? And I was like, well, if you would. We played 2 games of it while waiting for the taxi to take us to the airport, and then the last thing he said is like, yeah, we'll publish this.
Fabulous. And how did that feel? Was it a surprise?
Yes, it was like, is it because I didn't have to wade myself through hundreds of the loud pitching people like at a convention? Would it have always been this good, or does he see something that the others didn't? And then we worked for another year with him to further simplify the game, and by today's standard, I know that the game is not sleek enough, but as a first game, it was a wonderful launch, and even though Mityu and I disagreed over a lot of things, I hope he's as happy with the final product as I am. Once again, I know it could have been done better, but everybody has to start somewhere, and I'm happy where we started.
And how did the game do?
It had, at the time, Ludi Creations' biggest Kickstarter, $60,000. By today's standards, that's not a lot. 3, 4, 5,000 copies sold. I'm not sure about the exact numbers. It's a very Marmite game, to use the British term, because it has a lot of rules. You have to remember all those rules because everything in the game is secret. So if you go, hey, what does this card go? Then, yeah, you basically just nuke the game. Which meant that about half of the people just bounced right off and it's like, no, this is a shit game, it doesn't work. And there were other people, and the other thing that the game does, that it doesn't tell you how to win, it gives you all the options and then go have fun. Which meant that if nobody did anything, then the game went on for 2 hours and nothing happened. Which was boring. But then there was the other half of the people who got what we were trying to do and went immediately, ooh, so I can do that and that and that, and then, ooh, you have to stop me, but if you do, I might be with you, and those people loved it. So it's literally a hit and miss game, but it's a hit and a miss at the same time.
And so how did it feel when the game was published and you held that first published copy of the game in your hand?
Like one of those jumping puppy anime gifs, pretty much.
And do you still have that feeling, or are you just
First time the box lands in my hand, it's still self high five, even though now it's a tried and tested process that I myself manage.
Your next game is from a publishing house that you've worked with. This is Tricarion. How did you find out about Tricarion?
In the same year when Redacted was actually published, I was already living in London, as I said, but Mityu, the lead designer of Redacted, was still in Hungary. Well, he's still in Hungary now. And in Hungary at the time, I think they're still doing it. It was like all the wannabe game designers meeting up and exchanging ideas kind of weekend. We even showed off Redacted there before it got picked up by Ludi Creations. And I asked Mityu to go to it after we were published and talk to all the people and see if any of them smells like a professional. And he came back to me saying that there's two guys we should talk to. And when Redacted actually came out, and I went home to visit the family for the Christmas holidays, then we got all the Hungarian friends who playtested Redacted for the 5 years before that together, and thanked all of them, gave them free copies, gave them a free dinner, and we were like, let's invite all the people in the Hungarian board game industry that we know. And we invited these two guys that Mityu met at the board game the designers meet, and they were Richard and Victor, the designers of Tricarion. And they brought Tricarion along. And we didn't have time to play, but they taught me the rules. I got Dungeon Lords for Christmas 3 weeks before that, and I absolutely loved the Dungeon Lords, another Vlaada Chvatil classic, which has the simultaneous role selection, worker placement hybrid thing going on, which Tricarion does surprisingly actually sleeker. So when they explained the rules to me, I was like, holy hell guys, I think I should be loving this game. So when the game came out, I basically bagged it without a question. And then we started talking, and they asked me a few questions about how to run Kickstarters and whatnot. I'm like, guys, you don't need to ask me. Your first ideas are already better than anything I know. So we kept talking, and then half a year later, while they were in the middle of producing Tricarion, I approached them and said, okay, I finally played the game. I don't remember where I got the prototype from, and I absolutely loved it. Do you guys want to work together? And that's when Anachrony was born.
And so, what does Tricarion do? You said in your description that it was, one of your favourite heavy Euros. What does that mean?
I mean, the first time I played it, I learned it from the rulebook. I taught it to 3 people who obviously never played it before. It was 4 hours on the clock. It has a base game, basically a tutorial mode, and the full game. I always play the full game because that's where the game really shines. It's always 4 hours, never more, never less, but because every thinking is simultaneous, you're never bored for a second. It's 7 rounds of 5 actions each. Every move is excruciating. There is this entire system about, I don't know if you know the game, about placing the tricks in the theater card, which looks like a mini game, but actually one of the main points of interaction where it makes so much difference whether you go first or last or in the middle or before this action or after that action. So many subtleties, and it all comes down to a super smooth engine builder where you set out something to do at the beginning of the game, you pivot once or twice, and otherwise you're just efficiently making the most out of your purring machine.
Brilliant. So we move on and we go to 2015-16, which I guess is when you really started to make your name. Because you had 3 games that were pretty big. You had Days of Aya, Anachrony, and Kitchen Rush came out in... Of course, apologise. So, first of all, Days of Aya, was this because it's set in Budapest, it's a war game, ostensibly, was this a passion project? Was it...
No. I got 2 mails on the same day. One from Mityu, one from Kate, my co-designers on Redacted. One said that a cousin of hers knows somebody who works as a historian who wants to get a project going for the 60th anniversary of the Hungarian Revolution, and he wonders, and he played Redacted, and he wonders whether we want to design a game for him. And then the other email said that Mityu got a letter from the Hungarian, either the foreign minister or the culture minister, I don't remember which one, saying that this dude works there who wants to promote the 60th anniversary by making a board game. And I'm like, is that the same guy finding me over two different channels? Turns out it was. And it was his passion project to make the game. And Mityu and Keaton and I had half an hour talk on if we were to design a game, what would it be? We said it needs to look like you're running on the map of Ankh-Morpork, playing Battlestar Galactica without a traitor, against an opponent who plays Twilight Struggle. And then once we designed the game, then somebody said, hey, have you ever played Pandemic? And then once I played it, it was like, yes, this is what I was looking for. And then it just all fell in place from there on.
I mean, I was very surprised playing Days of Ire, I played two-player, how I was always playing the Hungarian rebels, how the asymmetry worked really well in the Soviets felt monolithic but a little bit slow and unwieldy, whereas the Hungarians felt weaker but they were very quick and very devious.
If you played two-player, then that's a very accurate description. The more players you play with, the more likely that you can do whatever you want to do, but less likely that you'll survive. The game is very interestingly balanced because of this. Somebody played a lot of four-player games, and he said, but you can't die on injury. I'm like, yes, because you played four players, so somebody will be always there to take the hit. When you're playing two-player game, you're running around trying not to get shot and having a hard time doing what you want. Whereas in 2, 3, 4 player, like higher Hungarian player counts, one of you can always do the good thing, but if everybody's out for surviving, then who will win the game? And I really liked that this experience, and then the Soviet player is harder to master because you have to anticipate the upcoming cards. Whenever I teach it to somebody, I always give them clues saying, look out for that card, and that card, because that might change your game. And it was sort of a game I designed for my own play group, because I wanted to play Twilight Struggle and they wanted to play lighter stuff like Pandemic. So I was like, sure, I'll design one where we can both have fun.
And how was it received in Hungary?
It got a Hungarian edition after the Kickstarter, which meant lots of people complained, why did they buy the English edition if they get Hungarian afterwards? Then they printed 15 or 200 copies, made a lot of advertisement, and then nobody bought it because turns out it's more complicated than Hungry Hippos.
I guess your most well-regarded, I don't know successful in terms of sales, but certainly your most well-regarded game thus far is Anachrony.
Yes, it's the biggest splash in every sense.
And were you surprised at how successful it was?
No, Trickarion is one of my favorite games. I expected this from them. It just turns out that what I added to the game design process compared to Trickarion made it even more likable for the crowd, which was a really good feeling for me, because I felt that everything that the guys have done right in Trickarion, they have done right in Anachrony, yet Anachrony became more successful, which is attributed to three things: the beautiful minis, the more mainstream theme, and hopefully the slightly different approach to game design that I had. At least that's what I was telling you and telling myself when I was convincing myself that I have something to do in the world of game design.
And so a lot of people talk about the elusive time travel game and how difficult it is to theme into board games. Do you think you've done it with Anachrony?
My first design it was always a time travel game. My first design of a time travel worker placement game involved you getting any kind of component you want from the future, and then making basically a little bet saying that my time machine will be powerful enough by turn X to be able to send this back to me. And it was a very interesting idea and completely unplayable on the fiddliness scale. So all I kept doing was maintaining the interesting level while continuously dropping complexity. And I think because I started not from a gimmick and not from a theme perspective, not from a mechanism perspective, but I always had my rules of time travel laid out in front of me, and I was looking for simpler and simpler representations of those rules in game rules.
And so Kitchen Rush is very different, and it seems very different from anything else you've designed.
Every game of mine is very different from every game of mine, at least I would certainly hope so, because that's how I keep not bored. When there is a reason why Vlaada Chvatil games are so highly rated in my mind, because even if I don't like one of them, they are all innovative and they are all unique and they are all thematically justified through interesting mechanisms. The Rosenberg or the Feld approach, or God forbid the Knizia approach, those things bore me to death, even if they're good games. Like, I can't even judge whether they're good games, because it's just like, no, I don't want to do that again, or no, that doesn't sound like something that should get me interested in. And that applies to my own game designs. I need to love my own games, because I'll play them 20-40 times by the time it's out of my hand, and if I'm bored of it after 5 games, then why bother? So that's why I have a cooperative game, a light war game, a heavy Euro, a completely different light Euro with no mechanisms shared, a real-time game, gotta keep myself interested.
So your next game is a game that you've had a hand in, and I'd imagine... I remember last year, I think it was last Essen, when I saw your name on the box, I was like, "Ooh, that's very interesting. It seems David's doing very well." And that's Tashkalar.
Oh, that's a passion project through and through. As I need to reveal to your listeners at this point, Tashkalar is also on my 5-game list.
This is what we're going on to. This is your 4th game.
Interestingly, it wasn't always. Tashkalar is a hard-to-get game. I played it 10 times and I liked it. I played it 20 times and I really liked it. I played it 50 times and I realized I'm absolutely loving it. And now that I have played it 220 times, it made itself surely and firmly onto my 5 games I don't want to live without list. And I was running around in the London Underground when a friend of mine asked me a question. So, tell me more about how you came up with this time travel mechanism for Anachrony. I explained the whole spiel to him and he was like, oh cool, so it is not just alone. I wonder how many other games could benefit from this whole concept of spend first, gain later approach. And I was like, I don't know, maybe somebody should make a Tashkalar deck where you first get the summoning effect and then summon the bee. Holy crap. And then I went home and typed an email to Vlaada.
And did you know Vlaada before that, or was this just completely speculative?
I met him twice. Once at an industry meeting where I just woke up to him and told him I'm a huge fan, and I asked him to play a game of Tashkalar with me. That was before the Nethervoid expansion came out, so he had the playtest deck in his pocket, and he beat me to shreds. That was amazing. I probably still have the picture framed somewhere. And on the strength of that, I went and at the Essen after that, I pitched the precursor to Kitchen Rush to CGE, which they loved but didn't pick up for business reasons. And of the strength of that, I dared to write the email to Vlaada saying, hey, can I design a Tashkalar expansion?
So Tashkalar was quite a big splash the Essen it came out. This was my first Essen. And everyone I was with at that time bought Tashkalar and was very excited. And it seemed to have faded somewhat.
Because it's almost a lifestyle game. It's almost a chess of our time. You can't appreciate it in 5 games. I started appreciating it after 25 games. And not because it's difficult, but because it's so insanely subtle. that none of what makes the game great is apparent. The theme is weird, the components are flat, the art is only thematic if you understand how the cards should make you feel, which doesn't happen on game one. But once you get into it, I imagine if somebody was designing chess today, they would try to make something like this.
And so how did it feel to design an expansion to a game by Vlaada Chvatil, who at this point is one of the legendary designers in the industry?
Well, he taught me that no matter how good I think something is, it can always be better. And that amount of perfectionism just set my own bar so much higher.
And so do you think he's helped you become a better designer?
Like, I haven't learned any tricks from him simply because I had to work so hard just to keep up with him. But I definitely learned method and maximalism. And towards the end of the development for Aviv, there were points where I had a bad idea, I said it, and I immediately realized what he will criticize about it and why. And it teaches me to criticize myself one more time before I honestly think it's a good idea.
And so, coming on then to the future, what's coming from you in the future now that you're a freshly minted full-time professional game designer?
You guys all need to fire up your time machines and go back to beginning of February, because the sequel for Days of Fire, called Knights of Fire Battle for Budapest, is coming on Kickstarter. It was estimated to be launched next week, but I think it'll be probably a week after that. But we're almost ready. We're almost ready to push the button, and it's my first proper war game, but it's a war game designed by a Eurogamer, so it's not a war game. My co-designer on it is Brian Train, the designer of A Distant Plane from GMT Coin series, which means that lots of proper war gamers went, ooh, I'm suddenly interested. It is mechanically completely different to Days of Fire, yet thematically it's not just in setting, but in feeling, as in I'm running around as the Hungarian, but death is coming for me, is very similar to Days of Fire in that regard. It's a card management, block movement hybrid. Literally the only game I ever managed to compare it to was Sekigahara, the Japanese reunification from GMT, but it's not the same. It's different, but I don't know. So that's one project that really Days of Fire went so well that it became my passion project despite not starting as such. And the publisher was kind enough to let me make a expansion, well, not an expansion, a standalone sequel for it. So that's what's happening. Then after that, at the end of February, so depending on how spring it is, you might still need a time machine for that, is my next big not co-designed game, is Dice Settlers from NSKN, art by the Miko, so it's gonna be pretty. I kept saying that every now and then I look at games and I want to remix them. This game started out as a remix. I played Couriers, I really wanted to love it, and it is just overwhelmingly random. As in, you roll dice and then somebody wins. And that was before I learned Roll for the Galaxy. And another game I was playing at the time a lot was Eminent Domain, which I still play every now and then because I find it really smart. And I was like, cool, Eminent Domain does this whole space colonization thing. What if I made a Couriers-like space colonization game? Then I took off the space theme to not make it look like Eminent Domain too much. And then it kept iterating, and luckily by the time Roll for the Galaxy set myself a new standard, the game was different enough that I didn't feel like I ripped anybody off. Basically, it's a bag builder game. Back when I designed it, nobody had the term bag building, but hey, I'm sure they started earlier. But in your bag, dice go. And at the beginning of the round, you pull a bunch of dice, you roll them, the dice have icons on them, like the dice in Roll for the Galaxy, and then you spend those icons to put buildings on the map and expand the map and learn new technologies like you would in any nice light 4X-ish game. And this was one of those games that I designed. I playtested for 3 weeks. I showed it to a few people. They said it's a bit complicated. I cut out half the actions. I playtested it again. Everybody said, can we play it again? And then I showed it to a publisher, and then he signed it immediately. And then it was sitting on the shelf for 2 years, but now it's off the shelf and it's coming, and I'm super excited. And it's hopefully it's gonna make a bit of a splash because it's accessible, it's Euro, it's pretty, it's fun. After that, it's Tricarion, which we've talked about. After that, Kitchen Rush might get an expansion if Artipia pushes forward with the plan. And then after that, Perseverance, my next big, hopefully only as big as Anachrony because there aren't tables that are bigger, which is a co-design with the designers of Yido, Thomas van de Giste and Wolf Planck. The two Belgian guys who are very nice people, and they showed me a dice mechanism that I turned into a Euro game. Then I passed it back to them, and they made it into a different kind. Then we added a hint of maybe loads of Waterdeep, I don't know, but certainly a lot heavier than that. Then we showed it to Mindclash. Mindclash loved it, but wanted more of an adventure game, so we added a bit of adventuring to it, and now it's a area control, dice placement, adventure, worker placement, city building hybrid. So it'll be as epic as Anachrony, just instead of time travel, this has dinosaurs.
Fantastic. So your last game is one I expect people to choose quite a lot, and might even be given the term modern classic. It's Terraforming Mars. Explain why everyone loves this game so much.
Because it's easy to pick up. You read the cards, you play one of them, you move on. And yet, for crazy people, there is depth to it. Like, you can minimize the luck. There are some people who over-minimize the luck for my taste, but hey, I've played it enough that I start to, if not know all the cards, but once I collect 3 of one set, then I expect what are the cards of that set I can draw. So it has insane amount of replayability. It is interactive, but not disruptively so. The 4 stealing cards don't matter, they just there to pace the game. I really get what it's doing, and most of all, everybody around really likes it, so it's easy to get to the table. And once I play a game 20 times, I can't not love it.
So, you're driving to the cabin.
Yeah.
The car skids off the side of the road, the back door flies open. 4 of the games fly out of the car, down a ravine, into a river, and are swept away. Which game do you hope is sitting on the back seat of the car?
Well, that depends whether the person I'm escaping away with already knows to play Tashkalar or not. Because
let's say they do. In
that case, it's gonna be Tashkalar, because if it survived 220 games, it'll survive another 200. Oh, if I had to teach it from scratch from somebody, then I would probably pick Mage Knight over it, because worst case I can always play that alone if the other victim doesn't want to learn it. So, if people want to get hold of you, if they want to see what you're up to, how would they do that? I'm very active on BGG. I'm subscribed to all my games, so I reply to every reasonable question. I'm active on multiple Facebook board gaming groups, so I can be found there. Shoot me a geek mail, or, just buy every single game I make, and then we can be friends. David Turczi, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And if you want to suggest a guest, or if you want to say something nice about the show, or if you want to say something horrible about the show, you can contact me on @5gamesfordoomsday on Twitter, or you can send me an email at 5gamesfordoomsday@gmail.com. You can visit the website, 5gamesfordoomsday.com, or go to the BGG Guild. You can support this show by going to patreon.com/5G4D. And if I haven't had to desperately flee from the flock of purely coiffured seagulls and the swarms of rampaging that guy, I'll
I'll see you in 2 weeks for another 5 games for Doomsday.